Vienna, 1885, as the scent of saddle leather and cold iron filled the vaulted hall of the imperial auction house near the Danube. Wrenna Ashleigh stood barefoot on the raised oak platform, her wrists bound in silk cords, a number pinned to her collarbone. Her dress, a faded muslin shift better suited to a scullery girl, clung damply to her ribs. Damp from the snow melt. Damp from her shame. She was the last of the lot. The rest had already been claimed young Omega women from the countryside or orphanages, paraded in front of titled alphas and wealthy magnates seeking pliant wives or discreet housekeepers. But no one had bid on her. Not once. "She's too thin," muttered a countess in furs, nose wrinkled. "She's not bonded." "No proof of heat," another whispered, disinterested. "She was rejected," someone else said, with something like pity. "The Duke of Württemberg sent her back after their engagement fell through." Bad omen. Wrenna stared at the far wall, where a shaft of winter light filtered through the stained glass crest of the Habsburg eagle. She didn't flinch when the auctioneer clapped his cane against the floor. 100 florins. Final lot. "Come now, gentlemen. She speaks 4 languages, has perfect posture, and no known sickness." Silence. Her throat burned. She wouldn't cry. Not again. Not in front of them. She had survived the rejection, the public notice, the weeks in the convent infirmary when her body had raged in heat with no mate to calm it. She had survived being labeled a failed Omega by court physicians and dismissed from her position as a lady-in-waiting. Now she would survive this. 50 florins, the auctioneer tried again. Still nothing. Then a new voice rang out, firm, clipped, and unmistakably royal. 150. Heads turned. The guards stiffened. Even the auctioneer blinked. A man stepped forward from the shadows near the side arch, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed not in the silks of a noble but in a dark cavalry coat lined with wolf fur. His boots were scuffed with road dust. A sword hung at his hip, its hilt worn from use. His face was pale and hard, the jaw clean-shaven, the nose straight, the eyes ice-gray and unblinking. "His Majesty," someone breathed. "King Zale Kessler of Bohemia." Wrenna's own breath hitched. She knew the rumors, the youngest monarch in a century, crowned after a duel at dawn with his own uncle. A former general. Unmated. Dangerous. Loyal only to his oath and his army. And he had just bought her. The auctioneer stammered, "Of course, Your Majesty." Sold. At once. 2 guards moved to escort Wrenna down, but Zale raised one gloved hand. "I will take her myself." He walked calmly to the platform, climbed the steps, and untied her wrists with surprising care. His fingers were warm through the gloves. He didn't speak. Just looked at her, the way a man might study a painting he couldn't afford to want. Wrenna swallowed. "Why me?" His voice was low. "Because no one else did." She almost recoiled, but his gaze softened barely. "I don't leave soldiers behind," he added. "I'm not a soldier." "You are now." He handed her a coat, his, already warmed by his body, and led her outside. Past the stunned nobles. Past the gossiping matrons. Past the guards who looked between each other, unsure whether to salute or stare. Snow was falling again. Soft and fast. A royal carriage waited at the curb, but Zale waved it off. Instead, he whistled once, and a black gelding trotted forward from the alley. Without asking, he swung Wrenna up into the saddle before mounting behind her. She clutched the pommel, stiff. "You're freezing," he said. "I'm fine." "You're shaking." "I said I'm fine." His arm curled around her to take the reins. She felt the heat of him through the coat, through the shift, through skin and bone. "I have nothing," she whispered. He didn't answer. Just nudged the horse forward. They rode out of Vienna before nightfall. She didn't speak again until dawn broke over the Bohemian highlands, their hooves crunching over frozen leaves. The road wound up to a stone fortress perched against the mountainside. Soldiers saluted as they passed. Inside, it smelled of smoke and steel and pine. Zale dismounted first, then reached for her. She stiffened. I can walk. You've walked enough. He carried her into the keep without another word. She was bathed, fed, and given a room of her own, small but warm, with a narrow bed and a window that opened onto the courtyard. Her name was stitched into the towel. Her coat hung beside the door. There were no servants. Only soldiers. And none questioned why she was there. By the third day, Wrenna asked, "What do you want from me?" Zale set down his fencing blade, breath still high from sparring. Nothing. You paid for me. I paid to keep you out of their hands. That's different. I'm an Omega. I know. I'm supposed to be mated. Do you want to be? She said nothing. He nodded. Then no one will touch you unless you ask. She stared at him. Why are you being kind to me? I'm not kind. But later, she found a tray of ginger tea and honey left at her door. And a book in her preferred language. And a scarf soft wool, in her favorite color. He never explained how he knew these things. She watched him train each morning. Sword, rifle, hand to hand. He fought like someone who had bled for every inch of ground he stood on. One night, she asked, "Is it true you dueled your uncle?" He didn't look up from his maps. Yes. To the death? Yes. Why? He tried to sell Bohemia to Vienna. Piece by piece. I offered him a cleaner end. She said nothing. He finally looked up. Do you think me cruel? No. Just tired. His mouth twitched. So are you. It happened during a storm. The roof slates rattled. The wind howled. And Wrenna woke drenched in sweat, her body aching, her breath fast. Heat. She staggered to the washbasin, splashed her face. Her glands pulsed. Her limbs trembled. She clutched the edge of the table and prayed it would pass. A knock. Then his voice. Wrenna. No title. No order. Just her name. She opened the door an inch. I can't, I'm not. His eyes locked on hers. You're not alone. She shook her head. Please go. I will if you ask me to. She didn't. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. They did not kiss. Not yet. He sat beside her on the floor, back to the wall, and took her hand. She let him. Their fingers twined slowly, without pressure. They stayed like that until dawn. Her head on his shoulder. His breath steady. Their bond, silent. But growing. The thaw came slowly to the Bohemian highlands. Long after the rest of the empire had turned to wet soil and crocus blooms, the fortress remained encased in frost, as though it too resisted change. But inside the keep, something had begun to shift. Wrenna found herself walking the upper corridors, learning their turns and silences. Soldiers acknowledged her now with quiet nods. She no longer startled at the creak of boots or the clang of brass fittings. Her room remained untouched, simple, clean, and hers, but she spent longer in the common spaces, the library with its high, dust-sweet shelves, the stone gallery where the light fell in slanted strips, the stables that smelled of hay and oil. King Zale was often gone before sunrise, returning only at dusk if at all. When he was there, the atmosphere changed. Not tense, but expectant. He carried with him a kind of stillness, the kind that preceded thunder. He spoke little, but when he did, people listened with a gravity that felt earned. One afternoon, she found him in the map room, alone. He was leaning over a table strewn with parchment, his coat tossed over a chair beside him. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing sinewed forearms marked with ink and old scars. You never rest, she said. He looked up without surprise. Nations don't wait. She stepped closer. What are you planning? A border survey. The Austrians have been moving patrols past the Isar River. I want to know why. You think they'll breach? I think they already have. Just not in uniform. She touched the edge of one map, tracing the ridgelines with her finger. This is where we rode in. Yes. You knew they'd be watching the roads. I hoped they would. She looked up. You wanted them to see us? I wanted them to know you were under my protection. She hesitated. Because I'm yours? He straightened. Because you're not theirs. She folded her arms. That's not the same. No, he said, voice quieter now, it's not. He didn't explain further. He rarely did. But she noticed, then, the way he kept his hands behind his back when he passed her. The deliberate distance he maintained. And the ache behind it. Later that week, a letter arrived from Prague. Hand-delivered by courier, sealed with the royal insignia of the emperor. She found Zale on the northern wall, watching the valley through a brass scope. The wind tugged at his collar. You have a summons, she said, offering the letter. He didn't take it. They want you to testify. About what? Your condition. Your dismissal. The auction. She stared at the envelope. Why now? Because your purchase was public. Because you embarrassed them by surviving. He took the letter, broke the seal, scanned it. Then handed it back. You don't have to go. If I don't, they'll say I'm hiding. They already do. She looked at him. Will you come with me? His gaze held hers. They'll demand answers. And blood. Then give them mine. He stepped closer. I will not parade you before men who think you worthless. Then help me prove I'm not. He studied her for a long moment. Then said, we leave at dawn. The journey to Prague was slower than their flight from Vienna. They traveled by coach this time, under diplomatic banners. Wrenna wore a high-collared coat of wool and sable, her hair pinned in a coronet of braids. She sat across from Zale, the sway of the carriage punctuating their silence. What will you say? He asked, finally. I'll tell them the truth. They won't care. They might. If you speak too. He looked away. They'll ask why I bought you. Then tell them. I don't know how. She leaned forward. Then start with this, I wasn't broken. Just lost. His shoulders shifted, as if bearing something invisible. And I wasn't looking. Just tired of pretending I wasn't. The streets of Prague were thick with coal smoke and banners by the time they arrived. The palace loomed above the river, all marble steps and gold filigree, as hollow as it was grand. Inside, the court waited. Zale entered first, every eye turning. He didn't bow. He never did. Wrenna followed, chin high, feeling the weight of their stares. Not curiosity, judgment. The inquiry chamber was tall and cold. The officials sat in a crescent, robes heavy with rank. The emperor's proxy, Archduke Luitpold, presided. Lady Wrenna, he began, voice clipped, you stand here to answer for the irregularity surrounding your failed betrothal and subsequent auction. I was not given a choice, she said, clear. You were offered a match with a duke. I was offered a transaction. Luitpold turned to Zale. And you, Majesty. You interfered with the sale. Why? Zale's gaze swept the chamber. Because no woman should be punished for surviving what others call failure. Because your system treats omegas as livestock. Because I needed no one's permission to recognize her worth. The room stilled. Luitpold narrowed his eyes. You claim a bond? No, Zale said. I claim a future. He reached, without hesitation, and took Wrenna's hand. Gasps rippled. Not for the gesture, but for what it implied. You plan to wed? Luitpold asked sharply. Zale didn't look away. I plan to let her decide. Wrenna stepped forward. Then my answer is yes. The chamber erupted. Voices rose, fists pounded. But none of it mattered. Because she saw, in Zale's eyes, not triumph but relief. As if the thing he'd carried longest was finally being laid down. Later, in the quiet of their guest quarters, she stood at the window overlooking the Vltava. He came to stand behind her, his breath warming the air between them. You didn't have to choose me, he said. I didn't, she replied. I chose us. He closed the space between them, not with force, but with certainty. Her back met his chest. His hand found hers. And for the first time, she leaned. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. The engagement was formalized at a quiet chapel in Kutna Ora, beneath carved angels blackened by time. There were no courtiers, no fanfare, only a notary, Zale's adjutant captain as witness, and the iron steadiness of their joined hands as the priest pronounced the betrothal. Wrenna signed her name in dark ink, her hand unshaking for the first time in years. They returned to the fortress after nightfall. The road was slick with meltwater, the sky low with cloud. Inside, the hearths had been lit and the corridors smelled faintly of beeswax and thyme. The soldiers they passed did not bow or cheer. But each gave a look of acknowledgement that settled into Wrenna's spine like a weight she hadn't known she wanted to carry. Zale paused just before the threshold of her chambers. You'll remain here as long as you wish, he said. After the coronation, if you want another wing, or a house in town. I want this one, she interrupted. I've had enough of being moved. He nodded once. Then no one will disturb it. She opened the door, but lingered. You never told me what you saw that day. At the auction. His brow creased. I saw a woman who didn't flinch when the world tried to make her crawl. That's not something I could walk away from. She looked down at her hands. I've been waiting to feel like myself again. You were never lost, he said. Only hidden. She let the door close between them, but it was not a barrier. In the days that followed, preparations began not for a wedding, not yet, but for a formal recognition before the Bohemian estates. The advisors insisted on it. They claimed the court would not accept an Omega without lineage unless she stood before them as a peer. Wrenna did not argue. Instead, she asked for records. Not of noble houses, but of laws. She spent hours in the keep's archive, poring over edicts, charters, and property statutes. The steward, an elderly man with a limp and a northern accent, watched in quiet astonishment as she cross-referenced articles and requested translations from Latin. Zale found her one evening in the scriptorium, a stack of pages beside her, a pen tucked behind her ear. I've had 3 barons try to bribe me this week, he said. She didn't look up. Then you're doing something right. He stepped closer. What are you working on? Your inheritance system is outdated. Widows lose all holdings unless named in a male heir's charter. You could change that. He studied the parchment in her hands. You think they'll listen to a treaty proposal from you? They'll listen to you. But they'll remember who gave it to you. He reached out and turned one of the pages. You found this in the municipal registers? And in the Moravian archives. There's precedent. It's just been ignored for centuries. He gave a short breath through his nose. You don't want to be Duchess of anything, do you? She looked at him then. No. I want to be heard. That's all. Later, as he reviewed the revisions in his study, Zale spoke without lifting his eyes. You could have walked away in Prague. You had your name cleared. I didn't want clearance, she said. I wanted change. And me? She stepped to his side, placed her hand flat against the table beside his. You never asked me to change for you. That's why. Spring arrived with thunder. The high cliffs behind the keep shed their snows in long sheets that crashed into the ravines below. The river swelled, carrying broken branches and the scent of earth. That morning, a rider came with news. the emperor had ratified the marriage by royal decree. The decree included, to the shock of most, a provision granting Wrenna full status as consort and legal authority to speak before the estate's assembly. Zale found her in the stables, brushing the black gelding that had carried them from Vienna. "You're the first Omega granted floor rights in Bohemian history," he said. She didn't stop brushing. "Then I intend to use them." He leaned against the stall door. "You could have said no to all of this." "I still could." He tilted his head. "Will you?" She turned, slowly. "No. I want to be beside the man who didn't ask me to kneel, didn't try to fix me, and didn't let them erase me." He stepped into the stall and took her hand. "Then let's build something they'll never undo." She didn't answer with words. She simply curled her fingers into his and held fast. The horse snorted, shifting its weight. Outside, the bells from the watchtower began to ring once, then again. Not for alarm. For announcement. They would ride to Prague again. But not in secrecy. Not as fugitives or witnesses. This time, they would arrive as equals. And this time, the city would not look away. The estate's assembly convened under vaulted ceilings and watchful oil portraits, the air heavy with incense and old blood. Wrenna stood behind the carved railing reserved for royal consorts, her gloves folded precisely in her hands. She wore a dress of forest green silk, the sleeves fitted tightly to her arms, the hem brushing the polished stone floor. Her hair was braided and pinned with jet combs, unadorned but precise. Zale stood beside her, not behind. His uniform bore no medals, only the insignia of the Bohemian crown stitched above his heart. He did not speak unless addressed. He did not need to. The Chancellor cleared his throat. "The matter before the Assembly concerns the proposed reformation of inheritance and property rights, presented under the joint authority of His Majesty and her intended." A baron from the southern provinces rose. His cuffs were stiff with lace. "We are not accustomed to legislative proposals originating from women Omega or otherwise." Wrenna met his gaze. "Then it is time you adjusted." A few in the chamber shifted, stiffened. Zale said nothing, but his hand tightened slightly on the railing between them. The older margrave beside the baron leaned forward. "What personal interest do you have in landholding law, Lady Wrenna?" "I do not speak from interest," she said. "I speak from experience. When I was cast out of my betrothal, I lost every right to the property I had governed. I was not compensated for the management I provided, nor the revenue I preserved." "This is not a court of grievance," the margrave replied. "No," she said. "It is a court of law. And law must be sharpened where it has grown dull." A few murmurs passed among the rows of nobles. More than one voice, Wrenna noted, belonged to women. The Chancellor shifted to the next item. The Assembly must also decide whether to confirm Lady Wrenna's elevation to Queen Consort upon the coronation, given her non-noble birth and disputed Omega status. Zale stepped forward. "There is no dispute. She carries herself with more dignity than half the bloodlines in this room. If you need a pedigree, take mine. If you need a precedent, write one." "That is not how precedent works," the Chancellor said. "It is now," he replied. No one challenged the tone. After the session, they returned to the fortress under quiet skies. The roads had softened in the warmth, and the scent of damp bark floated through the open carriage windows. Wrenna leaned back against the velvet upholstery, her hands still clasped in her lap. "You didn't intervene," she said. "You didn't need me to. You knew they'd challenge me. They challenge everything that frightens them." She turned her head. "Do I frighten you?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, it was soft. "No. But you undo me." That night, she did not return to her own chamber. She opened the door to his study without knocking. He was seated at the desk, sleeves rolled, eyes shadowed with thought. A half-written letter lay in front of him, the pen still wet with ink. She crossed the room and took the pen from his hand. "I'm not here to be a symbol," she said. Or a reform. I know. I want my name to mean something only if it means something to you first. He stood slowly, the chair creaking behind him. You could have gone anywhere after the decree. Created a life with comfort and respect. Without me. I didn't want comfort, she said. I wanted to be seen. He stepped closer. You have been. From the first. Their lips met not in urgency, but in recognition. The kiss was quiet, deliberate, built of all the silences between them. Her hand found his jaw, the roughness of it grounding her. His arms circled her waist, firm and certain. When he pulled back, their foreheads touched. I've never asked you, he said, voice low. Not properly. She waited. He reached for her hand, pressing it to his chest. Wrenna Ashleigh, will you marry me? Not as queen. Not as consort. As the only person who ever made me want to stay still. She answered without hesitation. Yes. Because you never asked me to be smaller. Only stronger. They married the following week, in the fortress chapel. No foreign dignitaries. No gilded procession. Only the soldiers who had guarded the gates, the staff who had kept the hearths burning, and the priest who had known Zale since he was a boy. Wrenna wore no crown. Only a ring carved from iron and set with a stone from the riverbed below the keep. Zale wore the same. When they emerged from the chapel, snowflakes were falling again. Not heavy, but light, drifting like ash. Wrenna lifted her face to them, eyes closed. Zale offered his arm. She took it. The bells rang once, then twice. And the world, for the first time, felt theirs.